Welcome to the latest edition of CrystalCast. Today we're joined by Kris, Roscoe and Sandra Catterall of Seneca Bridging, where we spend some time talking through the opportunities available to brokers in bridging and development finance, and why, despite all the talk of Brexit and the economic uncertainty, there are still some excellent opportunities out there for your property investor clients. Take a listen, I hope you enjoy the content, and as always, if you are a fan, please click on subscribe and stay tuned for more future releases. All information provided is for mortgage professionals only and should not be passed on to potential clients. So today we're joined by Kris Roscoe, Relationship Manager from Seneca, Sharon Catterall, Head of Operations at Seneca, and Michael Fisher, Director of Development at Crystal. Morning everyone.
Morning.
Yeah, thank you for joining us today. If we can start off in traditional CrystalCast fashion with three things that are surprising about you. Kris, do you want to go first?
Okay, yeah, so genuinely I'm a fully qualified plumber that works in finance. I own a touring caravan which I actually bought before I turned 30, and I've seen over 100 different musicians live.
Wow.
I'm a qualified phlebotomist, so I can take blood out of people as well as lending money. I'm a member of the Caravan and Camping Club, so me and Kris are both, I'm a motorhomer, Kris is a caravanner. And I've got a small zoo at home comprising of 6 dogs, 2 cats, 2 chinchillas and 25 fish.
Amazing. Thank you for that. So when looking at development finance at the moment, we've seen a few shifts recently in the market. One of the big ones we've seen is maybe a shift from ground up development more towards refurb. Is that something you're seeing in your day-to-day life at Seneca?
I'd say it's always been a mix. There's probably I'd say a shift in the opposite direction. There's less PDR schemes going on. Some of the planning portals and the planning councils are a bit more reluctant to just hand out HMO licences, permitted development rights on the vast volume that have been done, and we've gone the other way from empty commercial units not being utilised to empty HMOs not being needed. So there's still growth on both sides. I'd say it's but by rights I'd say it's more shift to the ground up to the refurbs.
We're seeing, I have seen a shift in terms of the type of people wanting to do refurbs. So, over the last, since the recession, it's been experienced people wanting to do refurbs. And of late, we have seen quite a lot of people with no experience that are just wanting to buy a house, do a refurb, a quick tart and turn, I think is probably the way we'd phrase it. And we're seeing quite a lot of those at the moment where inexperienced people are coming back into the marketplace.
Okay, that's interesting. We've talked in recent episodes where landlords might be getting more involved in refurb than previously. The historic model was buy something, keep it and let it out, whereas now we're seeing them look to add value to their portfolios. Is that kind of in line with what you're seeing there? Or is it even less experienced than that?
Yeah, I think because we're more short-term funders, we probably don't get involved too much in experienced landlords that have got big property portfolios, because they will be funded by a longer-term lender, basically. But we do see people who have property portfolios buying properties that need a refurb at auction. That we can obviously then fund. So I think maybe the longer term finance providers, the banks that are generally cheaper rates than we are probably the ones who are going to see that kind of shift.
Yeah, we've seen the need for bridging in that particular sector. I've got a client at the moment his model has always been buy a buy-to-let, maybe add a room to it and then let it out from there, whereas now he's moving more into the commercial space, so buying a shop with one flat above and maybe splitting that into 2 or 3. So he's needing to look at bridging, whereas before bridging wasn't really an option to him.
Yes.
Yeah, I think ultimately you've hit the nail on the head there, Kris. The exits now, I'm seeing more retaining and exit being the refinance, so we're helping the clients all the way through the journey, whereas before a lot of my projects were definitely marketing 3 months before completion, the exit via sale. So without a doubt, landlords are looking to increase the yields on the property, and the easiest way to do that ultimately is to buy something that you can add value on by refurbing it.
We've also seen a rise in the number of refinancing of existing projects. How do you stand on that from Seneca?
Yeah, I've been in the industry for sort of 3 or 4 years now, and it's the same as Mike's just touched on. When I joined the industry, I'd say 90% of the exits that were being put to us were sell. Now it's probably more 70-30 in the favour of a refinance. There are some lenders coming into the market doing almost bridge to let products, and some of the longer term lenders are taking a bit more of a view on the LTVs, being a bit more punchy, which fits with the original bridge model. There's also that taboo's been lifted. If a bridging lender's done the original finance, be it build the properties, convert them, refurb them, that it's got a bridging lender on there, we're not going to touch it. That's almost disappeared as well. So yeah, I'd say I agree with that. There's a lot more refinance exits being utilised than sell on the open market.
I think we see it particularly in sort of your average house prices and average apartment prices, probably not so much in the high-end market. High-end market is kind of, I think with all the issues surrounding Brexit at the moment, I think the high-end market is probably the market that's been affected the most.
Yeah, again, I can vouch for that. There's fewer and fewer inquiries for £1 million plus properties, and certainly those kind of units in the London area. The market was flooded with, certainly the bridging and development area. There was tons of that knocking around 2-3 years ago. I very rarely see those kind of inquiries at the minute.
Yeah, likewise, I see exactly the same. I mean, the only ones at the large single dwellings that I see really are the ones where there's actually a pre-sale in place, as it stands at the moment, and which is good for me, because it's really where the lenders that will look at high value assets, large single dwellings, they really need to see something kind of concrete and sewn up, really, in the form of money's held on account with a solicitor or a contract signed.
With rebridging, it's always obviously been a bit of a taboo within the industry. Again, Michael, back me up on this, we're certainly seeing now more schemes that maybe have run out of funding initially, or where someone's tried to do it themselves and reached an impasse. How do you stand on rebridging?
So, yeah, I'll take this one. Seneca's sort of, we've always had an open mind on it. We've never said no to rebridging, but we also, we don't actively market it. It's a case of, does it make sense? Is there a valid reason for why it's gone over term? Why is the funder pulled out? There's been a lot of lenders that have struggled in the recent years. Some peer-to-peer lenders have come and gone. So again, you shouldn't penalise the customer for that. If their existing lenders, had financial problems or hasn't had the backing that was promised. However, on the flip side, if the client has just been lazy or has taken time with the planning, or has chosen the wrong contractor and they're almost at fault for the scheme, then we'd probably take a view that wouldn't fit with us. It needs to be a valid reason, and we'll look to help out if possible, and if it makes business sense for all parties.
I think that's one of the benefits of Seneca, because we're such a small team and direct access to the decision makers. We can have not a one size fits all solution. We can tailor make our thoughts and our credit sanctions in line with what we believe is to be quite sensible.
Yeah, I think that's key. We've bridging's become much more popular over recent years. The industry has cleaned itself up quite substantially, and rates have fallen as a result. But what we've seen on the flip side of that is clients sometimes rate chasing, where they may be looking at the interest rate rather than the most suitable solution. So people taking a 0.4, 0.5% bridging rate when actually they should be looking at development finance, which, especially when things slow down like they seem to be at the moment, that becomes an issue.
Definitely, without a doubt. I mean, the one thing people tend to look at when they're looking at bridging finance is thinking it's a quick and clean solution to a development problem. Now, what you find though is a lot of the bridging lenders who do branch out to your refurb and your development sites will, yes, it's a bridge, but they'll look at it from a development finance aspect. So you're not really avoiding any sort of the criteria, the underwriting criteria that lenders provide, because you still have to have the building reg sign-offs, monitoring surveyors and things. So it's now a case of, because the lines are a little bit blurred as it stands at the moment, educating the client kind of at the front end to make them feel comfortable with going down a more development sort of route with people that are experienced over a longer period of time in that sort of transaction, really.
Yeah.
We do find that some of the rebridges that we see are because somebody has gone to the wrong funder in the first place. So they've gone to a very traditional bridging funder who doesn't properly understand the development market, and as a result they end up getting quite nervous the minute there's a little bit of problem in the development. The only thing you can say with any great deal of certainty when you get involved in any development lending is the minute they put the spade in the ground, there'll be a cost overrun or there'll be a time overrun. And I think some of the traditional lenders, particularly where, as you touched on, where the rate chasing, trying to get the cheapest possible rate in the market, those are the ones that tend to get spooked the most the minute something starts to go wrong. So we do find that we end up bailing those developers out of that situation and uplifting those loans.
So when we're talking about borrowers chasing interest rates, there's the trade-off there between lowest rate or high or maximum loan amount. Where do you guys see that?
Yeah, it's all about educating borrowers and brokers, but it's really it should always be less about the rate or the loan amount and what's right for the scheme. However, at Seneca, the sort of the marketplace we fit in is our rates are probably slightly higher than industry average. However, we don't compound the interest, which is key. So we don't penalise the clients for not making monthly payments or rolling the interest up if they wish. And our LTVs, we tend to be higher than most. We understand certainly on a development scheme, clients are going to need as much as they can day one towards the purchase. And as we touched on earlier with the rebridges, if there's been a bridge done by another lender to purchase the site, and then they need as much as they can to refinance that onto a development product with us, we can accommodate that. We can go up to 70% against open market value, which sets us aside from most. And as I said, we don't penalise the clients with compounding the interest, which can save a few quid over the term of the loan.
Interest rate's always been an interesting one on bridging because we've always viewed the actual rate of interest more as a cost of the project, especially where development finance comes in. It's just another cost the same way as a builder or a QS. So for us, it's more about, can you get the funds? Are they available? And is that the most suitable solution for the client?
100%. At the end of the day, paying a slightly higher rate of interest to get a deal done is far superior than not paying the rate of interest, arguing the toss over rates, and not being able to get something funded. Developers look at their margins at the end of the completed project. So yeah, absorbing that as part of the cost is the natural way, really.
I think it's also important to consider when you're choosing your funding partner that they properly understand the market that you're in, and I think if we understand the development products as well as we do at Seneca, it helps along the way. So another important factor for clients is the speed of the delivery of the funds. So when we have a monitoring surveyor on site and the report comes in, how quickly is it dealt with? How quickly are those funds released and into the developer's account to settle subbies or main contractor bills? If there's delays to that causes disharmony on site and can cause problems, and that's when projects can overrun in terms of time, can overrun in terms of cost. When you've got disgruntled subbies on site, I think we all probably saw the YouTube videos of a disgruntled subby recently, and there's a little chip of rampage with his digger.
Yeah.
And those things really do happen.
Yeah, well, you're in quite a unique position here, aren't you, Sharon? Because you're a developer as well.
Yes, I've done some development myself. So when I look at schemes, yes, I definitely can. I look at all the aspects of the scheme. And certainly some of the refurb projects that have come to me of late, I kind of look at it as well as having a developer's hat on and a funder's hat on. I look at is it actually practical what's being put to me? Can this really be done? So I think I certainly have been a voice of reason and a voice of advice. Sometimes a fool and the money are easily parted, and many a true word spoken in jest. But we do get schemes sent to us that are ill-conceived, ill-thought out, and we say no to them for very good reasons that actually they just really don't work. I had a scheme put to me recently where somebody was buying a property for 100,000. They were spending about 60,000 on it, and it was worth 175 on completion. When I start adding up all the interest and fees over the term, it's not worth them doing it. Yeah. So, and then you've got to consider the viability, whether they've allowed enough in the budget for it. So very much, when I'm assessing schemes, I do have my developer's hat on as well.
And that just comes back to what we mentioned about the rate versus loan amount, or the suitability of the scheme and the product. That ties into it. It shouldn't be about the rate. It should be about the suitability of the lender for that scheme, and making sure that the right lender is being chosen to fund the project, depending on what that is, and less about what the rate's going to be charged at the end.
The industry will know Seneca from your development finance experience. Obviously, we've touched on that quite a bit this morning, and you were recently winners of the Development Finance Lender of the Year at the Crystal Ball. So congratulations for that.
Thank you.
But it's not only development finance you do, is it? You also do bridging.
Yeah, and similar again to how we calculate the interest and the fees on our development finance. Our bridging is exactly the same. So all our fees are calculated from the net advance, the arrangement fee, and the monthly interest payments are worked out from the net, not the gross. So again, we don't penalise the clients with the compounding of the interest, and it actually entitles the clients to get a bit more on day one. For our straightforward residential bridging product, we can go up to 80% gross, including all interest and fees, which runs to about 70% net against open market value on day one. And we're one of a few, if not the only lender in the market doing that at the moment. And that's where we want to see an increase in our bridging. We want to get known as being bridging specialists as well as development products.
Excellent. What kind of trends are you seeing on the bridging side of things at the minute?
Everything. Again, as we mentioned earlier, there's a few rebridges knocking around. The inquiries we've had in the last sort of couple of weeks have all been quite small stuff. Some that the clients are just looking to buy, maybe do light refurbs themselves and then flip onto longer term products. So a bit of everything is a mix really. Again, it pretty much sums up the way the market is at the moment. We're getting all types of properties landing on our desk. We will review any residential bridges, commercial bridges, and land with full planning, all on a non-reg basis.
We can also consider just pure residential bridges on a non-status basis, which means it cuts down a lot of the underwriting process for us. Not that we're particularly slow to underwrite. We can turn things around literally in a 24-hour period from getting all of the information sent and packaged to us. But it just helps if we've got a residential bridge and it's under 300,000, it's going to have the lightest of touches going through the underwriting process.
So as Mike touched on earlier, brokers and clients expect bridging at times to be very swift, very easy, very light touch transaction. So it's kind of facilitating that view that they have.
Absolutely.
So far in 2019, obviously there have been numerous changes, tax changes, political issues, etc. Where do you think the opportunities lie in the market currently?
Yeah, I think Brexit, one way or another, whatever your views on that are, there's going to be a level of uncertainty. Your banks and your high street lenders are always going to, they're always being a bit reserved in current times, and we've had a few big recessions over the last few years. Brexit's still causing uncertainty. So for us and the rest of the bridging and development market, there's always opportunities there. I think they'll never, the high street lenders and the mainstream lenders will never do everything that the subprime mortgage market does. And it's just about getting Seneca's name out there, show what we're capable of, and increase business. As we touched, we're great at development. We've got a long running history and track record of those schemes. We want to get known in the bridging game the same. So we're pushing on our marketing and our products around the straightforward bridging loans.
I think the bottom line, even though Brexit and the uncertainty that Brexit's creating, we still have a fundamental problem in this country, and that's we've got a shortage of housing. So, and that isn't going to go away. And I think the amount of the length of time that Brexit is taking, whether you were a Remainer or you were a Brexiteer, I think people just want to see that deal done now. And we're certainly not seeing a reduction in the number of schemes coming across our desk as a result of developers or investors being nervous about entering into the market, which is good. Mm-hmm. We have seen a bit of a tempered appetite in high-end property, which I think we touched on earlier. The London market, where you traditionally get your high-end values. And I think certainly from Seneca's point of view, we are definitely favouring average house price stock. So anything that comes across our desks, maybe over £1 million, that'd be the kind of stock that we would be a bit more reserved on, really, in these uncertain times. But certainly, we're not reining in any of our products at this moment in time as a result of Brexit.
I think also there's been opportunities outside of London. This whole Brexit and the recession we've been through in the last few years, as you know, people have realised there is life outside the M25. You know, we've done several schemes up in Scotland, in the North East, in the Midlands, you know, South Wales, and that's great for the country as a whole. And you know, it's doesn't put us off that it's not in London. We will lend all over the country in Scotland and Wales.
Yeah, I think Sharon hit the nail on the head really. Regardless of what side of the fence that you sit on, a decision and a line in the sand needs to be drawn now. What you are finding is they're less speculative developers, the more cautious guys who are looking to jump into the first or second schemes. I think ultimately they've been put off. The more seasoned professionals who kind of traded through the big crash in 2008, they tend to be a little bit more pragmatic with their attitude and going into the schemes knowing what the pitfalls are. And the chances are if they have traded with the previous recession, then they've got enough skin in the game and a little bit of cash flow to be able to get them through it. The one thing I'm seeing in terms of exit is with the apartment block schemes where a lot of it is off-plan sales to foreign nationals, there's definite reduction in kind of your Far East investors and people from the Middle East looking to retain properties in England. So I think there's a bit more cautious approach there. So what I am finding is a lot of my exits, if they aren't refinanced and they are sale, is going to the general public in the UK rather than overseas investments.
So where do you see the market heading for the rest of the year?
I think it'll stay pretty buoyant. I don't think Brexit's had a massive impact one way or another. The sooner they get on with Brexit, the better for us all. There may be a period of uncertainty post-Brexit, whichever way it goes. But I think certainly by the end of the year, we'll be back where we were. And we've seen massive growth in the first quarter of the year. And if it continues, we'll have our best year at Seneca. And that's what we're aiming for, and to smash it again in 2020.
I think ultimately there's going to be a massive influx of inquiries the day the Brexit decision is actually made. Things are only going to get bigger. The cautious people are going to be back in the game. All the people that have land banked at the moment that are sitting on the really, the larger unit schemes, maybe 160, 150 unit plus schemes, all of a sudden are going to be looking again for the finance and sharpening the pencils.
Yeah. I think, Sharon, you touched it. I touched on it earlier. The UK's got a housing problem, and that's not going to go away regardless of what happens with Brexit.
Absolutely.
So at some point people will see that opportunity, and if they are holding sites, Mike, then at some point they need to open up and the market becomes more liquid as a result.
Yeah, without a doubt. I've spoken to a lot of developers, a lot of kind of our seasonal clients that keep coming back who've constantly got things on the back burner, and they've made it quite clear that they've got a couple of plots of land and such that they're waiting to kind of release once they know about the costs, because it's not just about the appetite to sell really. What the contractors are doing, they're worried about the increasing cost on materials as well, and you don't know what impact that's going to have, and there's a huge bearing really on when you're working with tight margins, which a lot of developers do now, you're 15-20%.
Yeah. They
need to be ensure that all these materials and the labour costs aren't going to just jump through the roof, and that we talk about the sale of being people's appetite to buy, but really it's the profit margins on the contractors that's probably driving that cautious approach as much as the other reason.
So to finish up then, the traditional CrystalCast question: if you could make one change to the industry, what would you do and why? Kris?
Yeah, for me it'd just be a greater exposure of our industry as a whole. I think the regulators and the high street lenders and your large mortgage brokers and the likes, they almost forget that we're all here, screaming about how wonderful we're all doing and how much we can help clients. It's nice to see that over the years the taboo of bridging and development finance, certainly in the short term game that we're all in, has been lifted and is lifting at a rapid pace. But I think we can still do with more exposure to your average Joe. We're here, we can help you. We're not a means to an end. When the client goes into his bank to speak to his bank manager and he needs a short-term bridge or short-term development finance, we don't get a look in, and it'd be nice if that changed.
Sharon?
Yeah, just to echo some of Kris's thoughts. There has been a stigma in the marketplace. I think some traditional borrowers seem to think that we have lower standards, we're more aggressive if schemes start to go wrong. and you know there's a trust issue there, and certainly what I've seen, you know, from Seneca's perspective, you know, we are actually good at what we do, because we've got a strength of knowledge there. We are able to work with clients probably far better than your traditional institutions, such as the main high street banks, who the minute there becomes a problem, you get pushed into a problem management unit, then onto recoveries, and you're just going through a process rather than a personalised approach. And I think a lot of the smaller lenders are more personal.
Mike?
I think really the one thing that I would change is a more streamlined approach to how interest is illustrated with the lenders. I think when you work in this industry where there is an element of suspicion and caution with people that haven't used bridging finance, haven't used development finance, and you know there's a multitude of options across the board from the north to the south of England, and everyone's got money to lend, and everyone offers, you know, great products and services. If there was just something in place that had a streamlined approach towards illustrating interest in exactly the same way, it would, you know, it would pay dividends for transparency really, and the clients would be more informed. It would empower the brokers to be able to explain things a bit more, and ultimately I think that's the one single change that would have a massive impact.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. There's some really interesting content there, and I hope our brokers find it useful. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you.
To hear the rest of the series and be notified first of future episodes, hit subscribe. And to discuss any of the topics covered in today's CrystalCast, or any other specialist finance requirements, call us on 01827 301070 or visit our website at www.crystalsf.com. Thank you to today's guests, and as always, thank you for listening.